The family gathering was supposed to be a time for reminiscing and sharing memories, but for Paisley, it turned into a moment of heartbreak. Her sister, Margot, stood in the center of the living room, surrounded by boxes of family heirlooms, antique jewelry, old photo albums, and even their grandmother's cherished porcelain tea set. Their late grandmother's will had left everything to Margot, and she made sure everyone knew it. "I guess Grandma knew who really cared about her," Margot said with a smirk, her eyes flicking toward Paisley. The words stung. Paisley had been the one who spent every weekend with Grandma, helping her in the garden, listening to her stories, and learning the history behind every heirloom. But now, it seemed none of that mattered. Paisley forced a smile, but inside, she was seething. She had one card left to play, a secret she'd kept for years. "Enjoy the heirlooms, Margot," Paisley said calmly. "But remember, not everything is as it seems." The days that followed were unbearable. Margot paraded the heirlooms around like trophies, even posting pictures online with captions like, "Family treasures for the deserving." Paisley's phone buzzed constantly with messages from relatives, some sympathetic, others accusing her of not doing enough to earn Grandma's favor. But Paisley stayed quiet. She had a plan. Years ago, Grandma had taken her aside and handed her a small, ornate key. "This is for you, Paisley," she had said, her voice soft but firm. "There's a vault in the basement, hidden behind the old bookshelf. It's yours, and yours alone. When the time comes, you'll know what to do." Paisley had never told a soul about the vault, not even Margot. Now, as she stood in the basement, staring at the dusty bookshelf, she knew the time had come. The bookshelf creaked as Paisley pushed it aside, revealing a small rusted door. Her hands trembled as she inserted the key and turned it. The door opened with a groan, and inside was a treasure trove of heirlooms, more beautiful and meaningful than anything Margot had received. There was Grandma's wedding ring, a delicate gold band with a single pearl, a stack of handwritten letters from their great-grandparents, and even a quilt made by their great-great-grandmother, each stitch telling a story. But the most important item was a letter addressed to Paisley. She opened it with shaky hands. "My dear Paisley," it began. "If you're reading this, it means I'm gone, and Margot has taken what she believes is hers. But you, my dear, are the true keeper of our family's legacy. These items are yours because you understand their value goes beyond money. Protect them and protect our family's story." Tears streamed down Paisley's face as she read the words. Grandma had known all along. Paisley didn't waste time. She called a family meeting, inviting everyone to the house. Margot arrived last, her arms crossed and her expression smug. "What's this about, Paisley?" she asked, her tone dripping with condescension. Paisley didn't answer. Instead, she led everyone to the basement. Gasps filled the room as they saw the open vault and the treasures inside. Paisley held up the letter. "Grandma left this for me," she said, her voice steady. "She wanted me to have these heirlooms because she knew I would protect them. She also knew Margot would try to sell them." Margot's face turned red. "That's not true," she shouted, but Paisley wasn't done. She pulled out a stack of documents, emails and messages between Margot and an antique dealer, discussing the sale of the heirlooms. The room fell silent. "You were going to sell Grandma's things," Paisley said, her voice breaking. "You didn't care about her legacy. You only cared about the money." Margot tried to defend herself, but the evidence was undeniable. The family turned on her, their disappointment palpable. "How could you, Margot?" their uncle asked, his voice heavy with sadness. Margot stormed out, leaving Paisley to face the family alone. But for the first time in weeks, Paisley didn't feel alone. The family gathered around her, apologizing for doubting her and thanking her for protecting their history. "Grandma would be so proud of you," her aunt said, tears in her eyes. Paisley smiled, but she knew the fight wasn't over. Margot wasn't one to give up easily. In the weeks that followed, Paisley worked tirelessly to preserve the heirlooms. She created a digital archive, scanning photos and letters, and recording the stories behind each item. The family rallied around her, helping to restore the quilt and polish the jewelry. Even Margot, after weeks of silence, showed up one day with a box of old photos. "I found these in my attic," she said, her voice quiet. "I thought you might want them." Paisley accepted the photos, but she didn't let her guard down. She knew Margot's apology was just the beginning. The real test would come when Margot realized the vault wasn't the only secret Paisley had been keeping. But for now, Paisley focused on what mattered most: honoring Grandma's legacy and keeping their family's story alive. Margot's sudden appearance with the box of photos had been unexpected, but Paisley wasn't fooled. She knew her sister well enough to sense there was more to it than a simple gesture of goodwill. Still, she accepted the photos with a polite smile, tucking them into the growing collection of family archives she was compiling. The family had started to come together again, spending weekends at the house, helping Paisley sort through the heirlooms and sharing stories about Grandma. It felt like healing, but Paisley couldn't shake the feeling that Margot was biding her time, waiting for the right moment to strike again. One evening, as Paisley was organizing the letters from the vault, she found something she hadn't noticed before: a small folded piece of paper tucked inside one of the envelopes. It was a note from Grandma, written in her familiar looping handwriting. "Paisley, if you found this, it means Margot is still causing trouble. There's one more thing you need to know. The vault isn't the only secret in this house. Look behind the fireplace in the living room. Be careful and trust no one." Paisley's heart raced as she read the words. What else could Grandma have hidden? And why had she kept it a secret even from Paisley until now? That night, after everyone had gone home, Paisley crept into the living room. The fireplace was an old, ornate structure that had been in the house for generations. She ran her fingers along the edges, searching for anything unusual. Finally, she felt a small indentation near the base. She pressed it, and a hidden compartment slid open. Inside was a small wooden box, intricately carved with symbols that looked like family crests. Paisley's hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was a stack of documents, deeds, wills, and even a map of the property with areas marked in red. There was also another letter from Grandma. "Paisley, these documents prove that the house and the land it sits on belong to you. Margot may have the heirlooms, but this is your true inheritance. I kept it hidden because I knew she would try to take it from you. Use it wisely and protect our home." Paisley sat back, stunned. The house was hers? She had always assumed it would go to Margot as the eldest. But Grandma had outsmarted everyone, even from beyond the grave. Paisley felt a surge of gratitude and determination. She would protect this house, just as she had protected the heirlooms. But she also knew Margot wouldn't give up without a fight. The next morning, Paisley called a family meeting again. This time, she didn't invite Margot. She needed to make sure the rest of the family was on her side before she revealed the final secret. When everyone arrived, Paisley laid out the documents on the dining table. "Grandma left me the house," she said, her voice steady but firm. "She knew Margot would try to take it, so she kept it hidden. These documents prove it's mine." The family stared at the papers in shock. "But what about Margot?" her uncle asked. "She's not going to take this lightly." Paisley nodded. "I know, but I'm ready. Grandma trusted me to protect our home, and that's exactly what I'm going to do." As if on cue, the front door slammed open, and Margot stormed in. "What's going on here?" she demanded, her eyes narrowing as she saw the documents on the table. Paisley stood her ground. "The house is mine, Margot. Grandma left it to me. These documents prove it." Margot's face turned red with rage. "You're lying!" she shouted, grabbing the papers and scanning them. But as she read, her anger turned to disbelief. "This can't be real," she muttered, but the evidence was undeniable. The family watched in silence as Margot's world crumbled around her. "You've always been her favorite," she spat, throwing the papers back on the table. "But this isn't over, Paisley. You'll regret this." Margot stormed out, leaving the family in stunned silence. Paisley took a deep breath, trying to steady her nerves. She knew Margot would come back, angrier and more determined than ever. But for now, she had the house, the heirlooms, and the support of her family. And that was enough to give her the strength to face whatever came next. As she looked around the room, at the faces of the people who had stood by her, she felt a sense of peace. Grandma's legacy was safe, and so was their family. For now, that was all that mattered. The days after Margot's outburst were tense. Paisley could feel the weight of her sister's anger hanging over the house like a storm cloud. She knew Margot wasn't done. She had always been the type to fight until the very end. But Paisley wasn't the same person she had been before. Grandma's trust had given her a newfound strength, and she was determined to protect what was hers. She spent her days organizing the house, cataloging every heirloom, and preparing for whatever Margot might throw at her. The family had started to rally around her, offering their support and help, but Paisley couldn't shake the feeling that the worst was yet to come. One afternoon, as Paisley was sorting through old photo albums in the living room, she heard a car pull into the driveway. She glanced out the window and saw Margot stepping out, followed by a man in a suit carrying a briefcase. Paisley's stomach dropped. She recognized the man. He was a lawyer Margot had used in the past for her business dealings. Paisley took a deep breath and opened the door before Margot could knock. "What do you want, Margot?" she asked, her voice calm but firm. Margot smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I've come to make you an offer," she said, gesturing to the lawyer. "One you can't refuse." Paisley led them into the living room, her mind racing. She knew Margot was up to something, but she wasn't sure what. The lawyer opened his briefcase and pulled out a stack of papers. "We're prepared to offer you a significant sum for the house and the heirlooms," he said, sliding the papers across the table. "Enough to set you up for life. All you have to do is sign." Paisley glanced at the papers, her heart pounding. The amount was staggering, more money than she had ever seen in her life. But as she looked at Margot's smug expression, she knew this wasn't about money. This was about control. Margot wanted to win, no matter the cost. Paisley pushed the papers back across the table. "No," she said simply. Margot's smile faltered. "What do you mean, no?" she snapped. "This is a once-in-a-lifetime offer, Paisley. Don't be stupid." Paisley stood, her hands clenched at her sides. "This house, these heirlooms, they're not for sale. They're my inheritance, my responsibility. Grandma trusted me to protect them, and that's exactly what I'm going to do." Margot's face turned red with anger. "You're making a mistake," she hissed. "You'll regret this." The lawyer packed up his briefcase, clearly uncomfortable with the tension in the room. "We'll be in touch," he said, following Margot out the door. As soon as they were gone, Paisley sank into a chair, her hands trembling. She knew Margot wouldn't stop. If she couldn't buy the house, she would find another way to take it. Paisley needed to be ready. She pulled out her phone and called the family lawyer, Mr. Thompson, who had helped her with the documents from the vault. "Margot just made me an offer for the house," she said, her voice shaking. "I turned her down, but I know she's not going to give up. What do I do?" Mr. Thompson listened carefully, then sighed. "Margot's always been persistent," he said. "But you have the law on your side? Those documents are ironclad. Still, it wouldn't hurt to have a plan. Let's meet tomorrow and go over everything." The next day, Paisley met with Mr. Thompson at his office. They spent hours going over the documents, making sure everything was in order. Margot might try to contest the will, Mr. Thompson warned. She could claim that Grandma wasn't of sound mind when she wrote it, but we have plenty of evidence to prove otherwise. Still, it's going to be a fight. Paisley nodded, her resolve hardening. "I'm ready," she said. "I'm not going to let her take this from me." Mr. Thompson smiled. "Good. Because if there's one thing I've learned about Margot, it's that she doesn't back down easily, but neither do you." As Paisley left the office, she felt a strange sense of calm. She had done everything she could to prepare. Now, all she could do was wait and see what Margot would do next. But deep down, she knew this wasn't just about the house or the heirlooms. This was about family, about loyalty, about honoring the promises she had made to Grandma. And no matter what Margot threw at her, Paisley wasn't going to break. She had come too far to give up now. The fight wasn't over, but for the first time in a long time, Paisley felt like she was in control. And that was enough to keep her going. A week passed, and the house felt quieter than usual. Paisley used the time to continue organizing the heirlooms and preparing the house for whatever might come next. She had started to feel a sense of peace, as if the storm had finally passed. But deep down, she knew better. Margot wasn't the type to let things go, and Paisley couldn't shake the feeling that her sister was plotting something. Still, she tried to focus on the positive. The family had started to come together again, and the house was slowly becoming a place of warmth and memories, just as it had been when Grandma was alive. One evening, as Paisley was sorting through a box of old books in the attic, she heard a noise downstairs. It was faint but unmistakable. the sound of footsteps. Her heart raced as she crept down the stairs, her mind racing with possibilities. Was it Margot or someone else? She reached the living room and froze. The fireplace was open, the hidden compartment exposed. Someone had been here. Paisley's stomach churned as she realized what had happened. Margot had found the secret behind the fireplace. But how? And what had she taken? Paisley rushed to the compartment and peered inside. The wooden box was gone. Her heart sank as she realized the implications. The documents proving the house was hers, Grandma's final gift, were in Margot's hands. Paisley felt a wave of panic, but she forced herself to stay calm. She needed to think. Margot couldn't just take the documents and expect to get away with it. There had to be a way to prove they were stolen. Paisley grabbed her phone and called Mr. Thompson. "Margot's taken the documents," she said, her voice shaking. "What do I do?" Mr. Thompson's voice was calm but firm. "We'll handle this, Paisley. First, we need to file a police report. Then, we'll take legal action. Margot can't just steal your inheritance and expect to get away with it." Paisley nodded, even though he couldn't see her. "Okay," she said. "I'll meet you at the police station." She hung up and took a deep breath, trying to steady her nerves. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. The next few days were a blur. Paisley filed the police report, met with Mr. Thompson, and prepared for the legal battle ahead. Margot, true to form, denied everything. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said when Paisley confronted her. "I haven't been anywhere near that house." But Paisley wasn't fooled. She knew Margot was lying. The question was, how could she prove it? Then, one afternoon, Paisley got a call from her cousin, Emily. "I think I found something," Emily said, her voice excited. "I was going through some old security footage from the house, and I think I caught Margot on camera." Paisley's heart leapt. "Send it to me," she said. A few minutes later, the video popped up on her phone. It was grainy but unmistakable. Margot sneaking into the house late at night, her face partially obscured by a hood. But it was her. There was no doubt about it. Paisley forwarded the footage to Mr. Thompson, who immediately filed it as evidence. "This changes everything," he said. "With this, we can prove Margot stole the documents. She won't be able to deny it." Paisley felt a surge of hope. For the first time in weeks, she felt like she had the upper hand. But she also knew Margot wouldn't go down without a fight. The legal battle that followed was grueling. Margot fought back with everything she had, claiming the documents were hers by right and accusing Paisley of forging them. But the evidence was too strong. The security footage, combined with Grandma's letters and the testimony of the family, proved beyond a doubt that the house and the heirlooms belonged to Paisley. Finally, after weeks of hearings and arguments, the judge ruled in Paisley's favor. The house was hers, and Margot was ordered to return the stolen documents. When the verdict was announced, Paisley felt a mix of relief and sadness. She had won, but at what cost? The family was fractured, and Margot had become a stranger. Still, as she stood in the living room of the house, surrounded by the heirlooms and the memories of Grandma, she knew she had done the right thing. She had protected their legacy, just as Grandma had asked her to. And in doing so, she had found a strength she didn't know she had. Margot never apologized. She simply packed up her things and left, cutting off contact with the family. Paisley didn't try to stop her. Some battles, she realized, couldn't be won with words. But as she looked around the house, at the family photos on the walls and the heirlooms carefully displayed on the shelves, she knew she had won the most important battle of all. The house was safe, the legacy was intact, and the family, though changed, was still together. And for now, that was enough. The months that followed the legal battle were a time of healing and rebuilding for Paisley and the family. The house, once a source of tension and conflict, began to feel like a home again. Paisley worked tirelessly to restore it to its former glory, repairing the damage done by neglect, and filling it with the warmth and love that Grandma had always intended. The heirlooms were carefully displayed, each one accompanied by a small card telling its story. The family gathered often, sharing meals and memories, and slowly, the wounds began to heal. But Paisley couldn't shake the feeling that something was still missing. The house was safe, the heirlooms were protected, but the rift with Margot lingered in the back of her mind like a shadow. She knew Margot was out there somewhere, angry and bitter, and the thought of her sister's pain weighed heavily on her heart. One evening, as she sat on the porch watching the sunset, Paisley made a decision. She couldn't change the past, but she could try to mend the future. She picked up her phone and sent Margot a simple message. "I'm here if you want to talk." Days passed with no response, and Paisley began to think Margot would never reply. But then one afternoon, as she was working in the garden, she heard a car pull into the driveway. She looked up and saw Margot stepping out, her expression unreadable. Paisley's heart raced as she walked over, unsure of what to say. "I got your message," Margot said, her voice quiet. "I didn't think you'd want to see me." Paisley took a deep breath. "You're my sister," she said. "No matter what's happened, that hasn't changed." The two of them sat on the porch, the silence between them heavy but not hostile. Finally, Margot spoke. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice breaking. "I was so angry, so jealous. I thought Grandma loved you more, and I couldn't handle it. I made a lot of mistakes, and I hurt a lot of people. I don't know how to fix it." Paisley reached out and took her sister's hand. "You can start by being here," she said. "The family misses you. I miss you. We can't change what happened, but we can move forward. Together." Margot nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I don't deserve your forgiveness," she said, "but I'll try to earn it." Paisley smiled, feeling a sense of peace she hadn't felt in years. "That's all anyone can do," she said. "We'll take it one day at a time." The years that followed were a testament to the power of forgiveness and the strength of family. Margot slowly reintegrated into the family, her presence a reminder of the mistakes of the past, but also of the possibility of redemption. The house became a gathering place for the entire family, a living tribute to Grandma's legacy. Paisley and Margot worked side by side to preserve the heirlooms and the stories that came with them, their bond stronger than ever. One summer evening, as the family gathered for a barbecue in the backyard, Paisley stood on the porch, watching the scene unfold. The laughter, the stories, the love. It was everything Grandma had wanted for them. Margot walked over and stood beside her, a glass of lemonade in her hand. "She'd be proud of you, you know," Margot said, her voice soft. "You've done everything she asked and more." Paisley smiled, her eyes filling with tears. "We've done it," she corrected. "Together." As the sun set over the lake, casting a golden glow over the house and the garden, Paisley felt a deep sense of gratitude. The journey had been long and difficult, but it had been worth it. The house was safe, the family was whole, and the legacy was alive. And as she looked around at the faces of the people she loved, she knew that Grandma's greatest gift hadn't been the house or the heirlooms. It had been the reminder that family, no matter how fractured, could always find its way back together. And that was a legacy worth protecting.